So, thank you so much for coming. And again, it was 1 hour of, I feel like just of like brain vibration, thinking, enjoying. Now it's a conversation. You can engage with the world and, see where it takes us. We're hosted here by Kensari Kari. I don't know if y'all know this guy, but he is a curator, artist, honestly, I think in the Joburg landscape, a light, guiding light to all of us. And then we have Dr. Erica from AFRI. We are also very grateful for allowing us to have the opportunity. Thank you so much, AFRI. I don't know where you're at. There, somewhere. Jack, Khumo, I don't want to say anything about that. And then I think what I'm most excited about is we have an actual balemen from Dunusa. Without any further ado, Kensari.
Hello everyone. Thank you all for coming, and I think the common tie between all of you guys is that whether it's with Khumo, who used to go to Dunusa with his mother, or Francesco goes to the Sunday market every Sunday, which is part of a family tradition kind of thing. So what happens with sort of like this palimpsest of films is that you find that our personal lives, our lived experiences, our everyday is deeply tied up to these narratives. And with that, I'd like to ask the first question, and I think I'd like Erica to start off with the far end. What was your first experience of this market and this form of circulation of clothes and fashion? So that's the first half of the question. And then the second half is what led you to doing an academic study, where you take something like this very seriously. Yeah.
Thanks so much. My first experience of not Dunusa, but downtown Johannesburg was when I first got to Johannesburg in 1990. And it was in Doornfontein, and there were already then quite a hub of second-hand shops in Doornfontein. And as a designer, I was interested in looking at these traces of clothing, traces of design that weren't in textbooks. I was trying to look at outside of the textbook, what was outside of the textbook. So I was really interested and curious what was happening in these kind of border places. And so downtown was a kind of border place for me. So I think already then I was quite curious and thinking what happens in the spaces beyond the norm, or beyond the mainstream, or beyond the fashion capitals. And then the second question, why looking at it? And maybe this is just a little bit more broadly in thinking about the African Fashion Research Institute. And I think some of the films were really, I think Sunny Delight and the Nest Collective were kind of also speaking to this question of what is the impact of colonialism had on the way that we are in the world, on this continent, and dress and identity is a very big part of that. So I think I'm going to listen to the rest of you and think, and open it up. Thank you.
You can go next, Jack. What's the question? In terms of your encounter, your first initial encounter.
Yeah, I was 18 years old. I came to Johannesburg with my dad, and actually I want to say I was 11. I came with my mother, and she drove me around Hillbrow, and she was just she wanted to take me around Hillbrow and Yeovil because that's like where my parents met, and I remember she told me about the market, but when I was 18, I went to it for the first time. And I think there was like an aura to it, because you arrive at NTN, and then there's like a road that turns, and when it turns, there's just like this sea of people and production. And so it kind of like, the first moment I saw it, it kind of revealed itself to me, rather than, it was like a spot on a GPS. You know what I mean? It was something mystical about it.
And then we can go in this order.
Yeah, feels like 18. My name is Khumo. Suffering from secondhand clothes. But yeah, as Stanley said, that my mom introduced me to it, and when I matriculated from a trade, sorry, but yeah, basically I had a gap year. I didn't know what I wanted to study really, and I was really interested into fashion, and I was like studying grade 12. I was in COVID, so like I really had time to like think about what I wanted to do. And at the time I was obviously like very passionate about thrifting, and I didn't really have a lot of money to buy fabric and calico and sample and everything, so it really did feel like it made sense just to like go to the market and cut up. And it wasn't a hashtag sustainability thing at the time. It was more of like a necessity of like education, fashion education, and that I didn't have at the time. So I learned about the inside of the garments, how things are staged in the fabric, and from there I owe it up to the market for my, I guess, knowledge and personality within like the fashion industry. So yeah, that's why I say it's full circle, because like what? But
yeah, I think probably primary school, I might have been like, to be honest, like 8 or 9, which is crazy, because my father used to actually sell secondhand clothes, and used to mix it in with clothes that he and my mom imported from Italy, so people couldn't really tell what was from Dunusa, what was imported. And yeah, after he introduced me to it, I kind of obviously had this revelation of what it had in terms of the brands, inspiration, but then also opportunity. Like, I remember when I was maybe like in grade 4 or 5, the funny thing about the market is that there's like the Dunusa, but then there's also like the fake stuff around Dunusa. So I would buy like fake football jerseys and then sell them to my classmates. And I think that maybe also gave me like a vision in terms of how beyond the space it kind of inspires me. And now I honestly go to town in Dunusa to just refresh my mind. But that's why I went today this morning. I was just like, I need to like wash my brain, you know, because I think Joburg can be a bubble, and we exist within this bubble. And when you go to town, it's like you removed, and it's everyone from everywhere throughout the world, throughout Africa, and it makes me realize how big the world is, because there'll be a top from Amsterdam being sold by a homie from Senegal, and you're like smelling jollof in the background. You know, it's all part of the system, which I really enjoy.
Hello guys. Cardiff actually. I work in Tunisia. So working in Tunisia has been a very good stuff to me. And it's really life changing. Actually, I moved to this country because of working there. My brother owns a stand there, so he's an importer. So when he was leaving to another country, he asked me to come over and take over his business. That was how I found myself in Tunisia. So life there has been cool. That's a place you find different kinds of nationals: Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Ghana, all kinds of nationals. You find more than 150 countries who are doing businesses there. So a lot of things goes on in Tunisia actually. If you really come there for the first time, you're looking for real stuff to buy. You just have to be careful, because some people do mix fake and real. So that's some of the things you have to know when you come in there.
Thank you. This brings me to, you just brought up how there's a mix of different cultures and different people in those spaces. And even throughout the films, there's a common thread of cultural hybridity and the fight for Africans to look African. I think with colonialism, what happened was a lot of our cultures were fundamentally destroyed. It's called in academia, it's called epistemicide, the destruction of cultures. However, I think those cultures still thrive, in the interstitial spaces. I want to find out, I think I'll ask Khumo this, as a designer, how do you feel about this sort of hybridity of like Western clothing and sort of mixing it up and making it African? I mean, one of the designers had like a African bomber jacket, which is funny because, bomber jackets were first like military garments, and then now you're taking sort of like this, military jacket and creating an African version of it. What do you think of that? And also, what do you think the future of this hybridization is, within like a designer's context, but the broader sort of fashion context?
Thank you for the question. It's something that I keep trying to answer in my process. Because like, I listen to Playboy Cardi, I watch American stuff, UK, so it's like, it's been a long journey to accept that that is also a part of my cultural come up, you know what I mean? And a part of like my aspirations. But at the same time, growing up in Jersey, we all grapple with that tension between what the media, what they feed us, and like what our parents and our grandfathers feed us, So it's like, I find that middle ground, or like that conflict where I design. And if you guys remember the Goodwill Dumping movie, I mean the short film, fashion film, there were those guys in the Kenyan markets saying we're losing our African touch, so let me put fabrics on this garments. And it's like, I don't want to be a hater, obviously I'm not. That's dope. And it's like, it's a way to, it is a way, But coming back to your question, it's like, the moment you always try like depend on Western silhouettes to introduce your own African sensibilities, there's still that codependency and power on what you're being fed by the media. I don't know if that's making sense, like Western fashion. So it's dope, it's nice, but at the same time, it still maintains that Western gaze on how the West sees us, like hashtag Africa, Maboneng market, let me get a Nelson Mandela skipper. It's like, that's how they want us to view our culture, through their silhouettes. But I'm really grateful to be in a studio with a couple of other designers. A couple of them are here, like Tuli and my bro in the documentary, Aiden as well. It's like we really challenge each other to try and find other ways to dress. And obviously not, like, I'm still indoctrined, as you can see, but with women's wear specifically, I find there's a freedom of speculation, and that's where we're concerned now, to like speculate the future. And how we try to do that is like try and learn about different silhouettes and draping techniques and different ways women dress, because women are really the forefront of how we're perceived, and like the way we dress, to when they wrap like literally a simple fabric around their waist, to how they carry their babies with the fabrics. Like that type of relationship with fabric with women is how I'm trying to figure out, and then with the fabrics, with Western fabrics like Donosa and stuff, it's like subverting and like deconstructing those type of clothing into our like practice and sensibility. So it's kind of like the reverse of what we're trying to do, if that makes sense. It's like our silhouettes, but their fabrics or their type of materials, and it's like that's kind of us taking back our power in a way. It's a bit complex, and I'm contradicting myself, but that's an ongoing conversation. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think, it's a very complex and nuanced chat, this one. I think what makes, and I should have started with this, but I think what makes this conversation important is, the three fundamental human needs are shelter, food, and clothing. No one can survive without one of those three things. And with clothing, we get to self-fashion. So it's like, it's a basic need that you don't have to go crazy about. But somehow, because we're human beings and we have cultures, we fashion, and create identities through clothing. And with this, I want to ask Erica a question on how do the aesthetics of discard challenge dominant fashion narratives about style, value, and authenticity, particularly in a hyper-local sort of context of South Africa.
I thought this was a public holiday. I thought we were just relaxing. We're going back to school. But yeah, I think the question about what arrives, and when you say discard, there's waste. There's waste flows, there's secondhand flows. Some of them are gems. Some of them are interesting words in themselves that we can play with. But I think the question that I think is really for us to think about is, it's a language, and what we're being served in terms of sort of the aftermath of colonialism as well, but the continuation of that is that there's a very limited language, a very limited alphabet. And what would it be for designers and for us to start adding into that alphabet, so that the alphabet is not saying one single language? And I think that's the challenge, that inserting new lexicons or new languages or new words, and what those words are and where those words are rooted in. Because I think clothing brings values, brings ways of being in the world, and a lot of those ways of being in the world are quite counter to sort of African philosophies or African ways of knowing or indigenous knowledges. So how can we insert new words, new vowels, new consonants, new ideas into that language? So I think that's really important.
Amazing. The next question is for filmmakers, Jack and Fran. What role do you see documentary playing in archiving not only fashion, but the movement, economics, and culture around it? I'm really interested in cultural archives and how we design and disseminate those archives. I think with this project, it's been sort of like this continuous effort, that's been serialized. And this is one of the iterations of that. And this is I think an interesting model and form of distributing archives. So yeah, what do you guys think about that?
One thing that came to me, I think, from watching it last night, today, what I realized is that there's so many different ways to tell a story. It's like we're almost hyper-focusing on one idea, but everybody kind of tells it from a different perspective. And that's the beauty of filmmaking, of documenting. I think we should be able to look at the different perspectives and look at them in a whole. I think what I loved was when it was the Sunny documentary, and they were speaking about the negative impacts of the donation, because a lot of the time we think of giving almost as a only positive sense, but giving also means receiving the burden. So receiving that burden comes with its own turmoil, its own problems. And what Jack and I and Khumo, I think a lot of us in our own right are trying to do is tell the story from our perspective. And it's not a one-take wonder. It's a thing which keeps on going, keeps on changing. And I think that's the beauty of it. And we should always continue and strive to be able to keep knowing where we came from in terms of the past narrative, and keep that for the future in terms of what we're trying to tell next.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think of the question is, I've taken a lot of photographs of people in my whole life, and I'd say the most thrilling thing in that experience is actually coming back with the photo and seeing the way that person responds to seeing themselves. And so I think documentaries, but films in general, are a vehicle for people to see themselves and see how they have seen themselves. And I think if we don't take up the responsibility of archiving and seeing ourselves, narratives can run away and get out of control. And I think of, I mean, not to get too topical, but I really think of the way farmers, Afrikaans farmers, have sold a narrative to America, which is untrue. And I think we in this country looked at that and dismissed it. But I think now I'm looking at that experience and I'm going, like, it's our responsibility to take ownership of the narrative, because things can get manipulated. And that's why it's like the work, I'd say maybe the past few years has been kind of like concerned with contributing to pop culture and pushing the mainstream like pop culture space. But now I think it's moving to a direction of pushing an agenda and not being shy about that and not being insecure about that. And I feel like this screening is maybe sharing some archive that is uncomfortable, but I hope the value of it is so that people can see the way we've maybe lost sight of ourselves because of a lack of meaningful archiving.
The last question is for Kadil before we open up the floor to audience questions. So what kind of expertise or intuition goes into sorting through the bales and setting up shop? And more importantly, what do people often misunderstand about the kind of work that you do?
Actually, selling those bills, you need to put a lot of energy, a lot of work. Yeah, like bringing them into the country, clearing them from the customs and all that. You know, some countries are not, testers are not allowed into some countries. I don't know about the laws of South Africa. So, how do we bring these stuff in? When we go to Western countries like maybe Holland, China, or Korea, so we go to those companies that sell this. They call them racks over there. Actually, it's not meant for charity. I watched the clip here. It's being gathered from the street and it's taken to a warehouse where they tie those things together. So when you get there, you will see different kinds of varieties of clothing. So when you are bringing them into the country, the companies there over there are going to give you access to let your government know that this thing is being donated for charity. But we as the importers, we buy it from them. So when it comes into the country, if the custom cross-check it and see what's inside the stock, they can approve it. Some people don't get lucky, but that's just what you have to know as a business owner. It's not, it's ups and downs. There are good days, there are bad days. So at times you can bring your stock, you'll be lucky to get it out from the custom office. So when you get your stock out, all you have to do is get a good warehouse. As you can see, the way people are bringing out from the containers, these are the things you need to put in order. And most especially, things like this need a lot of capital. It's not just, it's not a business for kids. You see the way the street is. Yeah. You see the way the street is. You think they are playing, they are not playing. They are making a hell of money out of there, and they invested a lot of money. Like, the tale of this, it depends on the stock A bale of this can be costing you 4,500, 4,000, 3 point something. You understand? So, and it's not guaranteed that when you open it, you're going to find everything inside cute. Some of them will be rubbish. You understand? So that's at the loss you find inside those. It's just like a blind market. So that's the risk you take inside it. So when you're going into this business, you just have to know anything I get into inside this girl is okay. But mind you that if there's 100 pieces of clothing here, let me just say everything. Even when you come to Dunusa, you see clothes of 5 rand, 10 rand. Yeah. When we newly open them, we sell them from maybe 100 rand, depends on how much the stock is. But when it's going down, we change the prices because those ones are the leftovers and people still buy them. So you just have to don't be scared of bringing these things or maybe what the customs are going to do to you or what, because when you go there, if you have the real rights of bringing these stocks, you have the license to bring them, you bring them. Those customs are there to assess it. If they approve it, you go. Some people bring these stocks and it's being seized. So it's just game of luck. It's not guaranteed that your stock will come in and you get it. Yeah.
Amazing. Could you guys give us a round of applause? Yeah, we're gonna open the floor up to a couple of questions. We're gonna treat it like an auction. There's 10 minutes left. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, please, the floor is yours.
Are you guys happy with the results of your production?
Which production?
Like
Oh.
Are you happy with the result? Are you happy with everything?
If you guys are happy, we're happy.
Yeah, it was really nice to do this because. Oh, sorry. Okay, cool. Hey, we're really happy because I think not only the films, like, we're proud of each other and like throughout the years we were doing these, but also those archive clips really, because it's like we all came together, me, Jack and Francesco, like we did like hot chops because there are a lot of different archive clips that we could have brought, but I think these ones really like contradict, affirm, like, yeah, they do the opposites of what other films do, so it's good because we can think and come out with like a very like holistic conversation after this. So yeah, it was dope, and we hope to do another screening V2 with other films and another topic, you know, in the second half of the year. So please pull through to that as well. Thanks, guys.
Zano?
I think there's a question here.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, like, because I'm from Durban, and like we don't have like a structure really to like turn our stories properly. Like, how would you think that we should go about it as a city? Like how
I can give you a short answer. You should take pride in coming from there. You know, I think like when you take pride in something, you document it. It's like Instagram, you know, you only document the nice stuff because you take pride in them. So if you should take pride in, when you take pride, people are going to feel accountable to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are going to invest in you when you take pride in the space. Obviously, it's way more nuanced and complex than that. You know, like we live in South Africa. But yeah, I think there's a world of possibility when you remember why that place is beautiful and you share that with the world. Yeah.
Are you talking about this or are you talking about Dunusa?
I'm talking about just because like that's things going from Johannesburg.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like there's something things that you know we would put on the top about it. How do you like mentally go through it? And how do you think that we should try and think about it for us to do the same thing?
Specifically the screening or Dunusa as a whole? Like are you trying to say like the actual Dunusa or the culture? Yes, storytelling, I would say. I think Kim answered it very well.
Oh, my. Oh, do you want to? You can ask a question.
You should go first.
No, I did it as a way to. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. The question is an economic one based on the three aspects that we have here. That being the person selling the second-hand clothing and the designers that we have in terms of like clothing manufacturing. How do these elements clash with each other? Because I understand that you make clothes to sell them to people, like the 5,000 and the 500 shillings conversation came about. How do you guys go about maneuvering through that? How do you deal with these low-priced items and your top niche designs and how they clash with each other?
That's a good question. And I think, thank you for the question. And I think what I'm trying to do and scale up, like there are difficulties with scaling up with upcycling, whatever, but it's really like what we're doing within film, fashion, literature, theory, academia, it's like we're trying to propose a different way of doing things, not necessarily trying to compete. So the minute you buy from us, people, our stuff, it's also kind of onboarding a different way of buying clothing, watching movies, and all of that, you know, and not on the side of like fast fashion and kind of like this overconsumption, just a lot of like vibes. So with me, I think I'm very small scale, but I hope one day, like within that documentary, you saw us working with like Ghanaian shoemakers and bros that have like real artisanal skill, and that's the whole point with I guess design and like upcycling. And it's a long-winded answer, but it's about kind of like reintroducing these artisanal crafts within upcycling, and it's proposing a slower way of doing things and saying we don't need too much, we don't need a lot, but the things that we do need is like quality and like craft driven. So I guess with the Kenyan documentary as well, they were proposing that. So it's like a lot of these people that are working the bales and the thrift were taken from the textile manufacture, the industry, the textile sector. So yeah, I think it's a marriage, it's a clash, it's a whole vibe, but we'll get there.
No, you go.
My question is design related. Khumo, I want to know, because your process is so intuitive driven and each garment you find differs from the previous one that you found the last time, I want to know, like, could you describe what are some of the challenges that you like go through when you like constructing the garments? What are the joys when things go with a piece of linen goes with a piece of denim? Can you just like invite us into that room and what it feels like?
Thank you so much. It's fun. Yeah, like you really see the craziest things, you know, and yeah, like we also send each other photos, and like I'm sure we all do send each other photos of like crazy Dunusa finds, you know, of like there's one that I saw of like Frida Kahlo wearing a t-shirt of Princess Diana. It's like there's a lot of vibes. So within the process, it is fun because as much as you're working with these pre-existing memories and thoughts and identities, again, when you cut them up and put them together, it's a reflection of yourself. Because like, why did you choose these things? You know what I mean? So I feel like it's way more fun. But the challenge is again is scaling up because it's like one-of-ones or fives or whatever. But it's a learning process. I think I'm not only tied to like upcycling, but the process of that, like deconstructing and how things are this way and things are this way and go this way. It's like I like the mind boggle. But yeah, there are designers in like that have made it with like upcycling and stuff. I'm trying to like maybe auction some stuff on the website, you know, raffles. Like you try to find different ways, and I think right now it's like an artistic practice, but the challenge is trying to, at the end of the day, make things that are like wearable and everybody can share. So I can't answer that aspect, but that is the difficulty. Yeah.
1915, a company in Japan that is now called Arabs and Sons implemented a law that stopped the shipment of European clothing goods, specifically to the South Asian region, Chinese, Koreans, Japanese. It felt like the shipping of those garments stopped people within that market to become entrepreneurs because they became more dependent on finding second-hand and pass-down goods as a way of survival, as opposed to beginning textiles from scratch. Do you guys think what is happening to the continent, one, feeds to that ideology, that because Europeans donate so much clothing to the continent, stops local entrepreneurs from actually developing textile production and manufacturing? And then the second question I have is, do you think that South Africa can develop its own cultural design aesthetic that is not influenced by a semi-medium occupant, which is European clothing, as a way of forming our own identity against the commercial viability that the West then has in these markets?
Wow. It's a great question. Did we have 10 minutes?
Yeah, we had 10 minutes. I think we're done, but you can,
we're done.
We can take it.
I think it's a really rich question, and maybe that is what makes this second-hand flow so problematic. Is I think if it was in some kind of balance, which then respected also industries on this continent, I think then we would have a very different conversation. But I think it's the scale. It's an avalanche. There are 15 million garments arriving per week in Cantonment Market, for example. I mean, you saw some of those figures. That's 60 million in a month to one place. So I think it's the scale of this onslaught and what we're trying to do to push back against that onslaught. So it's an unfair battle. And so I think can we rethink of how we go into that battle? Can we create another kind of conversation? Because I think just battle and push back. I mean, you see the amount of waste. You see the amount of there are mountains of waste. And so I think to come back to this question about economics, I think this question, it is a question of economics. Those who hold the power of food production and clothing production hold the economy. And so I think to push back and reclaim that kind of ownership is really, really, really important on so many levels.
Yeah, I'd like to contribute to that by reiterating what Sunny Dolat said. I think the proposition in that film is to actually ban all the imports of European clothing. And I think other African countries have a stronger sense of standing up to the West, whereas I think because of post-apartheid, there's been this aspirant to America idea in media and DSTV and Disney Channel and whatever. And so I think maybe it's kind of trying to learn from the rest of the continent in their sensibility of standing up to the West and just being a bit more firm on the value, the internal value that we have living in South Africa.
Yeah, I don't think for South Africa there's one answer. Given our history, I think it gives us this complication. Japan is such a great example for banning because they have such a strong national sort of identity and heritage and archive and ideals. But with South Africa was a combination of all these different things. Banning would then create its own issues because I think how many people are employed by the second-hand market is probably it's close to the hundreds of thousands. But one thing I would say, I think we're also contributors to the waste in a way because I feel like through everything, through the clothes that come in, we consume so much. And maybe it's the perspective that because we're buying it secondhand, we're doing something good. But in a way, it's like you're also just over-consuming, and overconsumption is the issue. And through that, I think it's another conversation relative to what's happening from Chinese production, with Shein and Temu, with, you know, what kills me is when I go to Dunusa and I find Shein, and I'm like, y'all knew it was trash, like, y'all threw it away, and then it's coming back to South Africa. So I do believe that there needs to be more administrative, maybe control in terms of what comes in, but then in the same breath also of what is made here, incentivizing more sort of growth this side and intention in terms of production, but then also a rejection of what's the easiest sort of way of production. I went to, again, another thrift store today in town, and they sell usually like secondhand clothes, but now they were also selling brand new Chinese clothes, like brand new tights and stuff. And I was like, we're just consuming, and we need to look more within ourselves as consumers and say, do I really need that? You know, because consumption is a response to production, or rather, it goes both ways. Production is a response to consumption. So, you know, maybe we need to look at ourselves, and things would be a lot easier.
I think it's what's interesting. Do you want to answer? I'm gonna just say one more thing. What's interesting about Africa is that it's not only the world's biggest extraction site, it's also the world's biggest dumping site. You know, and I attribute a lot of it to policy making. You know, like there's probably so many people that want to be designers, but so few people that want to write the policies, you know, that control these circulations, you know, and I think that's what's needed, right? Like, we need more policy makers. I think we have too many designers, man. not to shade anyone. You know, like, we need more people creating laws, you know, to protect us.
Actually, on that aspect, the Western world, they see Africa as the market. Even there, if you have traveled there, you see there are places they sell second-hand clothes. It's not only here. You go to UK, Amsterdam, you find them. So even when we go there to buy, some of our business counterparts, they visit here. Some of them have come to Tunusa, a lot of them, to see where we do business, to see how they can work with us. So they just see Africa as this market, as a selling point. It's not as if it's a dumping site to them. Because when we go there to buy, we also have choices. We don't just take anything they give us. We give them conditions. Because times you see some of those clothes, you can put a lot of money, you bring them back, you get rubbish inside of it. So it's a loss to you. So when we go there to make the order, we make sure that whatever we are bringing is in good condition.
Yeah, can we get a round of applause? Thank you for all the questions. That was really lovely. Shout out to the Bioscope. Thank you to all of you. Like, this is, like, it's effortful, you know, to come out and to support your friends. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces. There was a lot of love in the room. Thank you to the boys. May you guys continue, you know, taking this to the top. To Erica, thank you so much for joining us. I think you brought a lot of intellectual robustness to this conversation. And there's an adult in the room, which is nice, you know. Yeah, and thank you to you, my brother, for coming through. I think it was a great idea. One more round of applause.
Ah ouais, man.